The moving truck pulled away from the San Francisco apartment building, and I watched my mother's face drain of color through the video call. You're you're actually moving to New York right now? I smiled serenely at the screen, standing in front of my new Manhattan brownstone that I'd purchased outright with my trust fund, the one they didn't know I knew about. Yes, Mom, I told you 3 months ago. You said you were too busy to help me look at schools, remember? My father grabbed the phone from her shaking hands. Olivia, this is insane. You can't just move across the country without us. You're only 18. I'm actually 19 now, Dad. My birthday was last week. You missed it. I watched his face contort with confusion and denial. But don't worry, I'm not upset. I've learned not to expect much from you two anymore. We need to talk about this, my mother shrieked in the background. Come home right now. This is home now, I said calmly, then ended the call. As I turned to face my beautiful new brownstone, mine, paid for entirely by myself, I felt a satisfaction so deep it almost hurt. In my previous life, I'd waited desperately for them to care, to notice me, to choose me. I'd gone to the local state school they'd picked for me, living at home, watching them pour all their money and attention into my younger sister, Madison, while I worked 3 jobs to pay for my own education. I'd died at 28 in a car accident, exhausted and driving home from my 3rd night shift that week, still trying to earn their love. But then I woke up at age 17, 6 months before high school graduation, with every memory of my wasted previous life intact. And this time, I knew exactly what I was worth, and what they weren't. The history of my family's betrayal ran deep, carved into my bones through both lifetimes. I was born first, their practice child as my mother once called me in what she thought was a joke. For 7 years, I was enough, not cherished exactly, but sufficient. Then Madison arrived and everything changed. She was a beautiful baby with golden ringlets and wide blue eyes, while I was dark-haired and average. She was sunny and charming, while I was serious and quiet. By the time she was 3, the family dynamics had already calcified into their final, devastating form. Madison was the star, and I was the shadow who existed to make her shine brighter. It started small. Madison's birthday parties had ponies and princess themes with dozens of guests. Mine had a cake from the grocery store and maybe 2 friends. Madison got piano lessons, dance classes, art tutoring. I got library cards and told to entertain myself. When Madison wanted to try violin, they bought her a $3,000 instrument. When I made the volleyball team, they said they couldn't afford the uniform fees. My father was a successful corporate lawyer. My mother ran a profitable interior design business. Money was never actually the problem. By high school, the disparity was crushing. Madison got a new car for her 16th birthday. I was told I could share my mother's old sedan when she didn't need it, which was always. Madison's college fund was discussed at every family dinner. Mine was never mentioned because, as I'd discover later, it didn't exist. In my previous life, I'd confronted them about it during my senior year. Why does Madison get everything? I'd asked one night after they'd refused to come to my academic awards ceremony because it conflicted with Madison's dance recital. Madison needs more support, my mother had said, not even looking up from her phone where she was ordering Madison a new laptop. She's sensitive. You're strong. You've always been independent. You don't need us hovering over you. It was a beautiful reframing of neglect as respect for my capabilities. I was strong because they'd given me no choice but to be. I was independent because depending on them had never yielded anything but disappointment. My father had added, besides, you're smart enough to get scholarships. Madison needs our financial help. Madison, who had a 2.8 GPA while I maintained a 4.0 and was 3rd in our class. So, in my previous life, I'd swallowed it. I'd gotten those scholarships, partial ones, never enough. I'd worked myself to exhaustion. I'd gone to state university 15 minutes from home because they'd refused to help with out-of-state tuition, and I'd needed to keep my campus job at the local coffee shop. I'd watched them pay for Madison's entire ride to a private university in California, including housing, a meal plan, spending money, and spring break trips. I'd graduated with $60,000 in debt despite working constantly. Madison had graduated debt-free and moved to LA to find herself on our parents' dime, while I worked 3 jobs to make my loan payments. The worst part, I'd kept hoping. Kept thinking that if I just proved myself enough, worked hard enough, succeeded enough, they'd finally see me. They'd finally be proud. I was still hoping when I died at 28, having just picked up an extra night shift to make rent after my student loan payment went through. I fell asleep at the wheel on a dark highway and never woke up. Except I did wake up. In my old bedroom, in my 17-year-old body, 6 months before high school graduation. The rebirth itself had been a violent, gasping thing. I'd jerked awake in my narrow twin bed, my heart hammering, expecting to see the bright lights of an emergency room or perhaps the darkness of whatever came after. Instead, I saw my old college pennant on the wall, the one from State U that I hadn't received yet but would, in 7 months, pin up with such false enthusiasm. For a full day, I thought I was having a breakdown or the most vivid dream of my life. But the details were too perfect, too specific. The chipped corner of my dresser, the way my phone showed March 15th, 2019, the sound of Madison's music blaring from her room down the hall. I tested it. That afternoon, I told my mother, Madison's going to come home crying today because Brittany said her audition was pitchy. My mother had laughed. Madison? Madison doesn't cry, sweetie. She's so confident. 3 hours later, Madison burst through the door in tears, wailing about Brittany's cruel comment about her pitch during the musical audition. My mother had stared at me in shock. How did you... Lucky guess, I'd said. But inside, I was reeling. It was real. All of it. I was really back. The next few weeks were disorienting. I couldn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? But slowly, the fog of confusion cleared and a cold, crystalline fury took its place. I had wasted my entire previous life trying to earn love from people who would never give it. I had martyred myself on the altar of their approval, and they hadn't even noticed when I died. I knew this because in my previous timeline, Madison had posted a memorial Instagram post about me that was really just a photo of herself with the caption, "Lost my sister today, hug your loved ones," that got 10,000 likes and launched her influencer career. This time would be different. This time, I would take what I deserved. The first thing I did was go searching for documents. I'd never been the type to snoop in my previous life, too desperate to be good, but now I had nothing to lose. What I found changed everything. In my father's locked filing cabinet, the key was in his sock drawer. Classic. I discovered my college fund. It existed. It had been opened when I was born, seeded with $50,000 from my grandparents, and had grown to $180,000 by my 17th birthday. I also found the documents showing that my parents had drained it over the years. First to remodel the kitchen, then for Madison's private middle school tuition, then for a family vacation to Europe that I'd been told we couldn't afford, so I'd stayed home with my aunt. The final withdrawal, made just 2 months ago in this timeline, had taken the last $45,000 for Madison's emergency cosmetic dental work, veneers she'd wanted after seeing them on Instagram. My college fund was empty. Every penny meant for my future had been stolen to finance Madison's present. But there was more. Buried in another file, I found something even more valuable. Documentation of a trust fund from my late grandfather on my mother's side. He'd died when I was 4, and he'd left me $500,000 in a trust that would become accessible when I turned 18. I'd never known about it. In my previous life, I'd turned 18 and nothing had happened. Now I knew why. The trust document showed my mother as the trustee, with the power to distribute funds for the benefit of the minor. I checked my mother's business accounts. Her password was Madison's birthday, naturally. She'd been taking trustee fees and management expenses from my trust for years. By the time I turned 18 in my previous life, she'd drained it to $50,000 and then convinced me to let her invest it in her business expansion, which had promptly failed. I'd never seen a cent of my grandfather's money, but I was 17 now, not 18. The trust was still mostly intact, $420,000 after her embezzling, and I had 11 months to protect it. I photographed every document. I created encrypted backups and cloud storage. And then I started planning. The second thing I did was research lawyers, not family lawyers. I needed someone who specialized in fiduciary duty and trust litigation. I found him 3 towns over, Martin Kwan, a sharp-eyed attorney in his 50s who'd made his career going after trustees who'd robbed their wards. I'm 17, I'd told him in our first consultation, which I'd scheduled during a study group and taken the bus to attend. My mother is stealing from my trust fund. I want to remove her as trustee before I turn 18 and she can finish draining it. He'd listened to my story, reviewed my evidence, and smiled coldly. Your mother has violated her fiduciary duty in approximately 15 different ways. The court is going to love this. We'd filed papers a week before my 18th birthday, catching my mother completely off guard. By the time I blew out my birthday candles, alone because they'd forgotten again and taken Madison to a concert, I had a court-appointed independent trustee and full access to what remained of my grandfather's gift to me, $407,000. My mother had stolen $93,000, but I'd saved the rest. It wasn't enough to destroy them yet, but it was enough to free myself. And freedom was the first step to revenge. The turning point came during spring of my senior year when college acceptance letters started arriving. In my previous life, I'd applied to 8 schools, 3 state universities, 4 private colleges I knew I couldn't afford but hoped for scholarships, and 1 Ivy as a Hail Mary. I'd gotten into all the state schools, 3 of the privates with partial scholarships that weren't enough, and been waitlisted at the Ivy. My parents had told me I was going to State U, 15 minutes from home. It's a perfectly good school, my father had said, and you can live here to save money. Madison was already planning her move to Chapman University in California, a private school costing $65,000 a year that they'd agreed to pay for entirely. This time, I applied to 15 schools, all of them far from home. Elite institutions, specialized programs, schools with massive endowments known for generous financial aid. And I did it quietly, never mentioning my applications at home. I also did something I'd never done in my previous life. I let myself shine. In my first life, I downplayed my achievements to avoid making Madison feel bad. When I won the science fair, I'd mentioned it only briefly at dinner. When I got a perfect SAT score, I'd shrugged it off as luck. I'd learned early that my successes made family dinners uncomfortable. My mother would get quiet, my father would change the subject, and Madison would find a reason to cry. This time, I won the science fair and put the trophy on the mantle where my mother's design awards usually sat. I scored a 1580 on my SAT and printed out the score report, leaving it on the kitchen counter. I made first chair in the regional orchestra, a position I'd earned but declined in my previous life to avoid the weekend travel Madison's dance schedule didn't allow. But I didn't tell them about my college applications. That was my secret weapon. You need to visit State U, my mother had said in March. We should take a campus tour before you commit. I haven't committed yet, I'd said. I'm still waiting to hear from some schools. What other schools? My father had looked up from his phone, surprised. In his mind, my future was already decided. Columbia, NYU, Stanford, MIT, University of Chicago, Northwestern, Carnegie Mellon. Olivia, those are all expensive or far away or both, my mother interrupted. We've talked about this. You're going to State U. You never talked to me about it, I'd said calmly. You talk to each other. Don't take that tone with me, young lady. What tone? I'm just stating facts. Madison had chosen that moment to walk in, waving her phone. Mom, look. I got 10,000 followers today. My dance video went viral. And just like that, I'd ceased to exist in the conversation. My mother had pulled Madison into a hug, already planning how to monetize her influencer career. My father had returned to his phone. I'd gone to my room and checked my email. 3 new acceptance letters. Columbia, Northwestern, a full ride to Carnegie Mellon. I smiled and started planning my escape. The college tour invitation was a test, and they failed it spectacularly. I'm touring Columbia and NYU next weekend, I announced at dinner 2 weeks later. Would you like to come with me? My mother had barely looked up. Next weekend? Honey, that's Madison's dance showcase. The important one where the scout from the LA dance company is coming. It's the only weekend I can go before decision day, I'd said. These are the top 2 schools I'm considering. Considering? My father frowned. I thought we agreed you were going to State U. You agreed, I didn't. Olivia, you're being very difficult about this, my mother snapped. We don't have money to fly to New York for some fantasy campus visits when you're not even going to those schools. I have money, I'd said quietly. Grandfather's trust, remember? The one he left to me? The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. That trust is for your future, my mother said, her voice tight. For emergencies and important things. Not for me, I'd interrupted. Is that what you were going to say? Because in my experience, nothing involving me has ever been considered important in this house. That's not fair, my father had blustered. We've given you everything. You've given Madison everything. I'm just the one who happened to also live here. Madison, to her credit, or perhaps her obliviousness, had looked uncomfortable. Liv, come on, that's not... It's fine, I'd said, standing up from the table. I don't need you to come to New York with me. I'll go alone. I just thought I'd offer, in case you wanted to be involved in your daughter's life for once. I'd left them sitting there in stunned silence. And I'd gone to New York alone. The city had been everything I remembered and nothing like it. In my previous life, I'd visited New York once at age 26 for a work conference. I'd stayed in a dingy hotel in Queens, taken the subway to a convention center, and flown home the next day, never seeing anything but meeting rooms and Penn Station. This time, I stayed at a boutique hotel in the West Village, walked through Washington Square Park, toured Columbia's campus with an admissions officer who treated me like I mattered, and had dinner at a small Italian restaurant where the waiter called me Signorina and brought me complimentary tiramisu when I told him I was celebrating my acceptance. I'd sat there eating dessert alone at a corner table and felt something I'd never felt before. Possibility. I could live here. I could build a life here. I could be someone entirely new, someone untethered from the weight of my family's apathy. By the time I flew home, I'd already made my decision. Columbia had offered me a generous financial aid package. Combined with my trust fund, I could afford it comfortably. More importantly, it was tucked out 800 miles from my parents' house. But I didn't tell them about my decision. Not yet. The climax of my revenge began the day Madison's dance showcase arrived, the one my parents had chosen over my college tour. I went, of course. I'd already done what I needed to do in New York, and I knew the power of being present for this particular performance. In my previous life, Madison's showcase had been a triumph. She'd nailed every move, the scout had been impressed, and she'd gotten a spot in the LA company's Summer Intensive, which had led to her brief, semi-professional dance career before she'd quit to become a full-time influencer. This time, things went differently. You see, Madison had a secret. In my previous life, I'd never known about it until years later when she'd drunkenly confessed at our parents' 30th anniversary party. She'd been cheating her way through high school. Madison wasn't dumb, exactly, but she wasn't particularly smart either, and her focus on dance and her social media meant she rarely studied. So she'd found shortcuts. Our mother's best friend's daughter, Samantha, was a straight A student who'd graduated the year before Madison started high school. Madison had paid Samantha to write her essays, do her homework, and even take some of her online tests. In my previous timeline, no one had ever found out. Madison had graduated with a 3.4 GPA, suspiciously higher than her actual ability, gotten into Chapman partially on my parents' donations, and coasted through college the same way. This time, I'd made sure the truth came out. It had been almost too easy. I'd befriended Samantha's younger brother, a sophomore in my AP computer science class, and during a group project at his house, I'd accidentally seen Samantha's laptop open to one of Madison's essays. Wow, I'd said casually. Your sister and Madison must really think alike. This essay looks exactly like the one Madison just submitted for English. David had frozen, stared at the screen, and then said, "Oh shit." "What?" "Nothing. Forget you saw that." But I'd planted the seed. And I'd done it 6 more times over the following weeks, leaving little breadcrumbs for David to find. Evidence of Samantha's cheating service hidden in plain sight, always when I was around to notice with innocent concern. David, being a fundamentally decent kid who was tired of his sister making money while he worked minimum wage at Target, had eventually cracked and told his parents. Samantha's parents had confronted her 2 days before Madison's showcase, and Samantha, facing punishment and potential legal consequences, had given up all her clients to save herself. The morning of the showcase, Madison had been called to the principal's office. My parents had been called in too. I'd been in AP literature when my mother had texted me, "Emergency principal's office now." By the time I'd arrived, Madison was sobbing. My mother was pale with fury, and my father was trying to threaten the principal into making the problem disappear. She paid another student to complete her assignments, Principal Greaves had said, unmoved by my father's bluster. We have evidence going back 3 years. Every essay, every major project. Madison hasn't written an original paper since freshman year. This is ridiculous, my mother had hissed. You're trying to ruin her future over some teenage mistake. It's academic fraud, Mrs. Hartwell, and it's being reported to all the colleges she's applied to. Madison's wail had been piercing. No, you can't. Chapman will rescind my acceptance. Perhaps you should have considered that before cheating. My father had turned to me as if just remembering I existed. Olivia, tell them Madison wouldn't do this. You're her sister. You know her. I'd looked at Madison, tears streaming down her face, and felt nothing. No satisfaction yet, just a cold, clear certainty. Actually, I'd said quietly, I believe it. Madison has never been good at writing, but her essays were always suspiciously polished. I just thought she'd gotten really good at using editing services. My mother's head had snapped toward me. Olivia, you're her sister. You're supposed to defend her. Like you, defended me? I'd asked. I'm sorry, I must have missed the memo where loyalty was reciprocal in this family. The principal had cleared his throat. Olivia, you can go back to class. This doesn't concern you. I'd left them there, my parents frantically trying to save Madison while she crumbled, and I'd felt the first warm spark of satisfaction. The showcase that night was a disaster. Madison, emotionally destroyed, and knowing her future had just imploded, had danced like she was moving through water. She'd stumbled twice, fallen once, and the scout from LA had left at intermission. My parents had held Madison while she sobbed in the parking lot afterward. I'd stood 10 feet away, waiting for my ride home, and my mother hadn't even looked at me. The next morning at breakfast, my mother had been cold. I hope you're proud of yourself. Excuse me? You could have defended your sister yesterday. You could have told them it was a misunderstanding, but you just stood there and let them destroy her future. Madison destroyed her own future by cheating, I'd said, pouring cereal with steady hands. I didn't force her to pay Samantha. That was her choice. She made a mistake. She's young. She's 18, Mom. That's old enough to face consequences. You're jealous, Madison had spat from across the table, her eyes red and swollen. You've always been jealous of me, and now you're happy I'm suffering. I'd looked at her, really looked at her. This girl who'd been given every advantage, every opportunity, every ounce of our parents' love and money, and who'd squandered it on shortcuts and social media vanity. I'm not happy you're suffering, I'd said honestly, but I'm not sad about it either. You had everything handed to you, Madison. Everything I had to fight for, you got for free. And you still cheated. So, no, I don't feel bad that you're finally experiencing consequences. My father had slammed his hand on the table. Enough, Olivia, go to your room. I'm 18, Dad. You can't send me to my room anymore. While you live under our roof? I won't be for much longer, I'd said calmly. I'm going into Columbia in the fall. The silence was deafening. What? My mother whispered. Columbia University. I was accepted with a financial aid package. I'm moving to New York in August. You can't, my father stammered. We never discussed this. We agreed you were going to State U. No, you told me I was going to State U. I might have agreed. We're not paying for Columbia, my mother said flatly. If you choose to go there against our wishes, you're on your own. I'd smiled then, genuinely. I've always been on my own, Mom. This just makes it official. The following months were exquisite torture, for them, not for me. Madison's acceptance to Chapman was rescinded. She ended up going to community college, her dance dreams shattered, her influencer career temporarily on hold as she dealt with the shame and gossip. My parents tried everything to get me to change my mind about Columbia. Guilt trips, bribery, threats. My father even offered to match Columbia's financial aid if I went to State U instead. Why? I'd asked him. Why do you suddenly care where I go to college? He'd seemed genuinely confused by the question. Because you're our daughter. Am I? When did that start? Because for the last 18 years, I felt more like your unpaid help who occasionally got table scraps. That's not true. Isn't it? When's my birthday, Dad? He'd opened his mouth, closed it, and gone red. He didn't know. He'd missed it 3 weeks ago and still hadn't remembered. It was April 18th, I'd said softly. I turned 18. It was a Thursday. I got accepted to Columbia that day. I celebrated by taking myself to dinner at that Thai place I like. I wore the dress I bought with my own money from my job at the bookstore. It was a good day. Olivia. He'd looked stricken, finally seeing me. But it was too late. Through it all, I prepared. I found an apartment near campus, a studio in Morningside Heights that I could afford with my trust fund and my work-study job. I opened bank accounts my parents couldn't access. I moved important documents, my birth certificate, social security card, passport, to a safety deposit box. I also hired a forensic accountant. You see, I hadn't forgotten about my stolen college fund. The $180,000 that had been meant for my education, drained by my parents to fund Madison's lifestyle. In my previous life, I'd never known it existed. This time, I had documentation of every withdrawal. The accountant, a meticulous woman named Dr. Patricia Chen, had examined my evidence and whistled low. Your parents committed theft and possibly tax fraud. If you wanted to prosecute, I don't, I'd said. Not yet, but I want the full accounting. Every penny they took from me, every cent they spent on Madison that should have been mine, I want a number. She'd delivered it 3 weeks before graduation, $347,000. That was what they'd stolen from me over 18 years. My college fund, my trust fund fees, the money my grandparents had sent for birthdays and holidays that had mysteriously never reached me. Even my earnings from my summer job at 15 that had gone into a family account and never come back out. $347,000. I'd sat in Dr. Chen's office looking at the spreadsheet and felt that cold fury calcify into something harder, sharper. Can I sue them? I'd asked. Yes, you'd likely win. But litigation is expensive and time-consuming, and they're your parents. Most judges encourage family reconciliation. What if I don't want reconciliation? What if I want justice? She'd smiled slightly. Then we make them an offer they can't refuse. The offer came in the form of a legal letter, delivered 1 week before my high school graduation. In it, through my attorney, I detailed every theft, every embezzlement, every violation of their fiduciary duty. I demanded repayment of $347,000 plus interest, and I gave them a choice. Option A, pay me back in full within 30 days and sign a legal agreement that I was emancipated from them financially and they had no further claims to my trust fund, my earnings, or my life. Option B, I would file a civil suit and potentially refer the matter to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. My mother had called me screaming within an hour of receiving the letter. How dare you? How dare you threaten your own parents? How dare you steal from your own daughter? I'd replied calmly. You took money meant for my education and used it to buy Madison's veneers. You embezzled from my trust fund to remodel your kitchen. You stole 18 years of birthday money. Did you think I'd never find out? That money was for the family. It was for me. Grandfather left it to me, not the family, and you had no right to take it. We're not paying you $347,000. That's insane. Then I'll see you in court. And Mom, when this goes public, and it will, everyone will know what you did. Your friends, your clients, everyone at the country club, they'll all know you stole from your own daughter to spoil your favorite. The line had gone silent. You wouldn't, she'd whispered. Try me. They'd paid. It took them 45 days instead of 30, and they'd had to take out a second mortgage on their house to do it, but they'd paid every cent. The money had hit my account 3 days before I moved to New York. Graduation day was surreal. I walked across the stage as co-valedictorian. I'd shared the honor with my friend James, both of us having perfect 4.0 GPAs. My parents had come, sitting stiffly in the audience while Madison had stayed home, too depressed to attend. When they'd called my name and announced my full scholarship to Columbia, there'd been applause and even some gasps. Columbia didn't give full scholarships often. My parents' faces had been rigid masks. Afterward, in the parking lot, my mother had tried one last time. "Olivia, please, can't we talk about this? You're destroying this family." "No, Mom," I'd said, holding my diploma. "I'm just leaving it. There's a difference." What are we supposed to tell people? That our daughter is too good for us now? Tell them whatever you want. Tell them I'm ungrateful. Tell them I'm selfish. Tell them I broke your heart. I'd paused, then added, "But if you tell people the truth, that I discovered you've been stealing from me for years and demanded my money back, I'll make sure they also hear about every detail, every withdrawal, every lie, every time you chose Madison over me. Your choice." My father had stepped forward. "Olivia, please. We made mistakes, but we're still your parents. We love you." "Do you?" I'd asked genuinely. "Did you ever? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you love the idea of a perfect family and I didn't fit the image, so you wrote me out of the story and hoped I wouldn't notice." "That's not— When's my birthday, Dad?" He'd gone silent again. Still didn't know. "Goodbye," I'd said, and walked away. I'd moved to New York 3 months later on a sweltering August day. I'd hired movers, packed up my studio apartment's worth of belongings, and scheduled a video call with my parents for the exact moment the truck pulled away from my new building. Their panic had been immediate and visceral. "You can't do this," my mother had sobbed. "You're too young. You don't know what you're doing." "I'm 19, Mom. I have my own apartment. I have a full scholarship. I have a job lined up. I have everything I need." "You need your family." I needed my family for 18 years, and they were never there. "I think I'll manage." "Olivia, please," my father had begged, and I'd realized with a start that he was crying. When had I ever seen my father cry? "Please don't do this. Come home. We'll do better. We'll be better." Where was this energy when I was 15 and working 3 jobs while Madison got a new car, I'd asked? Where was this when I was eating ramen for dinner because my food money went to Madison's dance costumes? Where was this when I won the regional science fair and you missed the ceremony because Madison had a sleepover? We didn't realize— You didn't want to realize. There's a difference. Madison had grabbed the phone, her face blotchy from crying. "Liv, please. I know I screwed up. I know I was spoiled. But you're my sister. You can't just leave." "Watch me, sir," I'd said, and ended the call. The epilogue of my revenge unfolded over the next 5 years, and it was sweeter than I could have imagined. Columbia was everything I'd hoped for. I thrived in the rigorous academic environment, made real friends who valued me for who I was, and discovered a passion for cognitive neuroscience that led me to graduate early with honors. I got into Stanford's PhD program with full funding, moved to California, and started building a career in research that was intellectually fulfilling and financially stable. I dated. I traveled. I went to therapy and processed 18 years of trauma. I built a life that was entirely mine, untainted by obligation or guilt or the desperate need for parental approval. My parents tried to maintain contact at first. Phone calls I didn't answer, emails I didn't read, gift packages sent to my apartment that I donated unopened. After about a year, the contact dwindled to birthday cards, which they finally got the date right on, and awkward Christmas texts. Madison tried harder. She sent long, rambling messages apologizing, explaining, begging me to understand. I never responded. What was there to say? Sorry wasn't enough, and understanding their behavior didn't mean forgiving it. Through social media, which I still occasionally checked, I watched their lives implode in slow motion. Madison's community college phase lasted 1 semester before she dropped out to pursue her influencer career full-time. It never took off the way she'd hoped. Her numbers grew slowly, and without the dance hook, she was just another pretty girl posting selfies. She got a job at a boutique, moved back home, and stayed there. My parents' marriage deteriorated. Turned out that when you remove the scapegoat from a dysfunctional family system, the cracks start to show. My mother resented my father for not fighting harder to keep me. My father resented my mother for the embezzlement that had forced them into debt. Madison resented both of them for their failure to protect her from consequences. They tried family therapy. It didn't help. You can't therapy your way out of fundamental character flaws. 3 years after I moved to New York, my parents divorced. The house had to be sold to cover debts, including the second mortgage they'd taken to pay me back. Madison moved into an apartment with roommates and posted melancholic Instagram stories about family trauma that got decent engagement but never went viral. My mother's interior design business suffered when word got out about the family drama. Turns out wealthy clients don't like hiring someone known for financial impropriety, even in their personal life. My father's law career continued, but his heart wasn't in it. He developed high blood pressure and had a minor heart attack at 53. He survived but had to cut back his hours. I know all this not because they told me, we barely spoke, but because my grandmother on my father's side, one of the few family members who'd always been kind to me, kept me updated. She'd visit me in California once a year, and we'd have dinner, and she'd shake her head sadly while telling me about the mess I'd left behind. "Do you ever regret it?" she'd asked me during one visit when I was 24 and defending my dissertation. "Cutting them off? No," I'd said honestly. "Do I feel sad sometimes that I don't have parents in the traditional sense?" "Sure, but I was already living without functional parents. Now I'm just not pretending otherwise." "Your mother asks about you, you know. She's in therapy now. She says she understands what she did wrong." "Good for her," I'd said and meant it. "I hope she's getting healthier, but that doesn't mean I need to be part of her life." "You've gotten hard, Livy." "No, Grandma, I got strong." "There's a difference." The final piece of my revenge, if you could even call it that, because by this point it felt less like revenge and more like natural consequences, came when I was 26. My research had paid off. My PhD work on neural plasticity and trauma recovery had garnered attention, led to a prestigious postdoc position, and culminated in a paper in Nature Neuroscience that made waves in both academic and popular science circles. I was invited to give a TED Talk, the topic: "The Neuroscience of Chosen Family, How Our Brains Heal from Toxic Relationships." I didn't use my family's names. I didn't need to. I spoke in generalities about the impact of chronic emotional neglect, about the way our brains respond to conditional love, about the science behind cutting off toxic family members. "We're taught that family is everything," I'd said from that red circle on the stage, my voice steady and clear. "But what they don't tell you is that sometimes family is the source of your trauma, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away." The talk went viral, millions of views, think pieces in major publications, interviews on podcasts, and my parents saw it. Of course they did. My mother called me for the first time in 3 years. I answered, curious. "Olivia," her voice was strained. "I saw your talk." "And? Was that about us?" "It was about my research, Mom. If you saw yourself in it, that's something you should explore with your therapist." "I've been trying to get better," she said, and she sounded genuinely broken. "I've been in therapy for 2 years. I've read books. I've tried to understand what I did wrong. I know I failed you. I know I was a terrible mother, but I'm trying to be better." "Okay," I said. "Okay, that's all you have to say?" "What do you want me to say, Mom? That I forgive you? That we can start over?" "It's been 7 years. I've built an entire life without you. I'm happy. I'm successful. I'm surrounded by people who love me unconditionally. What exactly do you think you can offer me now?" "I'm your mother," she whispered. "Biologically, yes. But you stopped being my mother in any meaningful sense when I was 8 years old, and you decided Madison was more important. You don't get to show up now that I'm successful and claim credit or connection." "I don't want credit. I just want my daughter back." "You never had me to begin with," I said quietly. "You had an idea of what a daughter should be, and when I didn't fit it, you discarded me." Well, I discarded you back, and I'm better for it. Olivia, please. I have to go, Mom. I have a meeting. I hung up. She didn't call again. Madison reached out a few months later after seeing the TED Talk. Her message was long, rambling, and surprisingly self aware. I know I don't deserve your time or attention. I know I was awful to you growing up, even if a lot of it was unintentional. I was spoiled and selfish, and I didn't realize how much Mom and Dad were neglecting you because I was too busy enjoying the attention. I'm sorry. I'm really, truly sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me or want a relationship with me. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what they did. I see what I took from you, and I'm sorry. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. You're amazing. You always were, and I was too shallow to see it. I read the message 3 times, then filed it away. Maybe someday I'd respond. Maybe not. The beauty of having strong boundaries is that you don't owe anyone access to you, not even for good apologies. At 28, the age I'd died in my previous life, I attended a gala for the Neuroscience Institute where I worked. I wore a designer dress I'd bought without checking the price. I gave a speech about our latest research funding. I laughed with colleagues who respected me. During the cocktail hour, my phone buzzed with a text from my grandmother. Your father had another heart attack. He's stable, but he's asking for you. I stared at the text for a long moment, feeling nothing. No panic, no guilt, no desperate urge to drop everything and run to his bedside. I texted back, I hope he recovers. But I'm not coming. He's your father, Livy. He's a man who shares my DNA. That's all he ever was. I put my phone away and returned to the party. The next day, I learned he'd survived, and I felt a mild relief. I'm not a monster, and I didn't wish him dead. But I didn't reach out. He'd had 18 years to be my father. He'd chosen not to be. That was his loss, not mine. By 30, I was an associate professor on tenure track. I'd published a book. I owned a beautiful condo in Berkeley, overlooking the bay. I had a partner, Elena, who was kind and brilliant and made me laugh. I'd also started a foundation, using a portion of the money I'd reclaimed from my parents, that provided college funding for students from neglectful families. I called it Second Chances Scholarship Fund, and every year we gave out $347,000 in total aid, the exact amount my parents had stolen from me, returned now to help others. That felt like victory. Not just surviving, but transforming my trauma into something that helped people. At 32, I got tenure. My mother sent a card. Congratulations, I'm proud of you. I didn't respond, but I also didn't throw it away. I filed it with Madison's apology, a small archive of too little, too late. The satisfaction of my revenge wasn't in their suffering, though they did suffer. It was in my thriving. Every day I lived well was a day I won. Every achievement, every moment of genuine joy, every healthy relationship I built, all of it was proof that they'd been wrong about me. I wasn't the problem child who needed to be grateful for scraps. I was never broken or unworthy or less than. I was just a person who deserved love and didn't get it from the people who were supposed to give it. And once I stopped waiting for them to give it, I found it everywhere else. At 35, I got married. It was a small ceremony in Napa Valley, just close friends and chosen family. My grandmother came, the only blood relative I'd invited. She cried happy tears and told me I looked beautiful. Are you ever going to talk to your parents again? She asked during the reception. Maybe, I said honestly. When I'm old and have fully processed everything. When I'm so secure in myself that their approval or disapproval means nothing. When I can look at them as flawed humans I happen to be related to rather than as parents who failed me. Maybe then. That's very mature of you. It's very boundaried of me, I corrected. There's a difference. She laughed and hugged me. The last time I heard from my mother, I was 37. She sent an email, short and simple. I don't expect you to respond. I just want you to know that you were right about everything. I was a terrible mother to you. I stole from you, neglected you, and prioritized Madison's temporary happiness over your well-being. I destroyed your childhood because I was shallow and cruel and didn't know how to love a child who was different from what I expected. I'm sorry. I will be sorry for the rest of my life. I hope you're happy. I hope you have everything you deserve. I hope one day you can forgive me, but I understand if you never do. I love you. I always loved you. I just didn't know how to show it in any way that mattered. I read it sitting in my home office, looking out at the bay, while Elena made dinner in our kitchen and our rescue dog snored at my feet. I felt something. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe the beginning of letting go. I wrote back, the first communication I'd initiated in 15 years. I appreciate you saying this. I'm not ready for a relationship and I may never be, but I accept your apology. I hope you found peace. I have. Her response came immediately. Thank you. That's more than I deserve. She was right. It was. But I didn't do it for her. I did it for me. Because carrying anger is exhausting, and I was tired of letting people who'd hurt me take up space in my head. At 40, I published my second book, this one for a general audience, Reparenting Yourself, a neuroscience-based guide to healing from family trauma. It became a bestseller. In the dedication, I wrote, for everyone who had to become their own parent, you raised yourself well. Madison sent me a copy of the book with a note tucked inside. Reading this made me cry. I'm so sorry I wasn't there when you needed me. I'm proud of who you've become, even though I had nothing to do with it. Love, Madison. I put the note with the others in a folder labeled, Maybe Someday. Maybe someday I'd reach out. Maybe someday I'd let them back in some small, carefully bounded way. Or maybe I wouldn't. The beauty of my life now was that it was entirely my choice. I'd been reborn once by dying and waking up 17 again. But the real rebirth had been choosing myself, walking away from people who couldn't love me properly, and building a life so full of joy and meaning that their absence barely left a hole. That was my revenge. Not their destruction, but my creation. They tried to make me small, and I'd become magnificent anyway. They tried to make me grateful for nothing, and I'd taken everything I deserved. They tried to make me dependent, and I'd become wholly, completely free. Sometimes the best revenge isn't making your enemies suffer. It's becoming so happy, so successful, so utterly complete without them that their opinions become irrelevant. I won not by destroying them, but by refusing to let them destroy me. And in the end, I got exactly what I always wanted, a life worth living, entirely on my own terms.